What's up, everybody? It is Tuesday, August the 5th. Yep.
You're doing so good.
Oh, man. August the 5th. And a big Tuesday slate tonight. And we're going to talk about it here on the Daily Fantasy MLB show, sponsored by FantasyElite, the app that you can get in the App Store. Mike Leone, who's no stranger to this show, or the Daily Fantasy Rundown, which Drew Dinkmeyer is a part of, is in the Daily Fantasy, or is in the FantasyElite Cup Championship. So they're getting that underway tonight with Rye Chase, and they're going to be doing the whole DFS Elite thing. So we'll make sure to follow along the Elite Cup. We're also talking about doing a fantasy football preseason show at some point, maybe week 3. Week 3 preseason fantasy football would be so fun, because you get like a half. It's like
you already know I'm going to be playing cash games.
Yeah, that is a foregone conclusion. With me on today's show, Derek Carty from Fantasy Insiders, as well as Davis Maddock leading the charge, and then from the Daily Fantasy Rundown there, Roto Experts, Drew Dinkmeyer. Drew, that hair though, woo!
It is out of control.
I am only jealous because my hair.
I've almost got like the Kid and Play flat top going on.
I really do.
I've almost got it totally working right now.
We need a Zoomeyer and a Bert and Ernie Photoshop pulled up immediately.
We do I'm only jealous because I don't even do that with my hair, because like every hair is like priceless on my head right now. So like when I get out of the shower, it's like I pat dry it. Like I don't ruffle it because every hair is valuable, and I don't I'm hanging on as long as I can. So
is that why you're doing the juicing thing? Is like hoping that your hair comes back?
No, that's just because I'm fat.
Oh, well, yeah, that's fair too.
Yeah.
I haven't had fast food or takeout in like 3 days, and to be honest with you guys, I feel terrible.
I haven't had any food outside of fruits and vegetables or juice in 5 days, and I'm not going to lie, I'm hungry. I'm hungry right now. Anyways, big slate tonight. A guy who is not hungry nor has any weight or hair problems, Derek Carty. Derek, what are your thoughts for tonight?
I don't know. I think pitching is fairly straightforward tonight. Although the weather in Philadelphia kind of throws a wrinkle into that a little bit, because I thought Keuchel was kind of like almost your surefire number 2 guy with his price.
I saw some stuff on Twitter that game's going to be like completely fine.
Yeah, it's starting to look like it will be. So if that's what people are saying, then that's good news.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think old Cycle is probably the best option for a second starting pitcher on DraftKings at 6,600, I think. And I mean, this is probably a good time for us to bring up the fact that, about 2 weeks ago, he told Eno Saris of Fangraphs.com that his elbow was feeling better, so he was going to start being able to throw his slider more, which, if you aren't super familiar with Cycle's body of work, is his best pitch, and really the only reason he's been as good as he is this year. And Soccer Dave told me, player speak, you can't put anything into that. And then he went, 7 scoreless innings with, I think, 9 strikeouts? Definitely something along those lines.
This is fine. I'll take it. It wasn't me saying that you can't put any stock in it. It was like you're putting all the stock in it. Like, Eno said this, and so it is like...
Except Eno didn't say it. He said it directly himself.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, just sleep back. Let us talk about pitching.
Tomato. I cannot wait to bring you, like, on Friday NFL shows, what players say about their injuries.
And I won't listen to any of it, because that stuff doesn't have any predictive value, because these guys lie every single week because it's in their best interest, whereas with a baseball player, when they're hurt, it's in their best interest to say, yeah, I'm hurt, because they're not going to get replaced if the reason they're pitching it or performing poorly is because they're injured and playing through it.
Okay.
Entirely different set of circumstances.
Baseball players tell the truth. Football players lie.
Football players are stupid. is also sort of the difference.
But baseball players are smart.
Some of them.
Okay,
Pitchers,
I'm just trying to get inside your head, and to be honest, it is a long, windy road to get there. So,
okay.
anyways, yeah,
Let's
no,
talk about
that's
pitchers.
great. I will be bringing injury reports preseason and players that are talking about how much they're going to be involved in the offense, that sort of thing, and you're going to love it. So I'm glad we have opened this box. Continue on with what you're talking about.
Dave can't just be wrong. He can't just be wrong, but he has to make it a larger... Whatever. This is not interesting.
Oh, whoa. I can't be wrong. I'm the one that can't be wrong.
Well-established fact, I can't be wrong.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about Clayton Kershaw versus Felix Hernandez. Derek, I want you to give your take first, then we'll go to Drew.
I think it's very close. I think I give Felix the edge tonight because Clayton Kershaw is up against a very strong offense, and even though they're going to be losing the DH coming over to the National League tonight, Anaheim's offense is still, very strong, whereas Atlanta, which Felix is going to be facing, is not. Atlanta strikes out a lot. They have, a couple of power bats and a couple of good players, but for the most part, they don't have very many good players. Felix is going to have the platoon against more of them than Kershaw will. Especially given the price gap, I think Felix is just as good of an option, if not a better option, than Kershaw, and you're not going to have to pay as much for him.
Drew?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the interesting thing with the debate is that Kershaw's just pitched at such a ridiculous level this year that it's hard to think of anyone being in a better position to succeed than he is on any given night. But this is a peak for his pricing that you're probably going to get all year, and it's the toughest matchup you're going to get all year. The Angels rank first in weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitching. As Derek mentioned, they're primarily right-handed. The DH that they're losing is like C.J. Cron or Efrain Navarro. It's not a huge...
Hold your tongue.
It's not a huge loss to their overall lineup. And, the Braves rank like 25th, 26th, something like that, in weighted runs created plus against right-handed pitching. So it's a huge difference in matchup, and the difference in matchup overweights the difference in talent between the two pitchers, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not like... Clayton Kershaw is the best pitcher in baseball right now. We go over this like every 5 days, and I think if Felix wasn't pitching tonight, I think Kershaw would sort of be like kind of an auto play, especially on FanDuel. But the fact that Felix is going tonight, does have a pretty good matchup, and is priced either less or the exact same as him, I think it sort of just makes it an easy play. Not that I'm saying that Kershaw isn't going to have a good outing, because I think that he probably will, but there are some bats inside that lineup that can absolutely get to left-handed pitching. They have the best positional player in baseball batting second for them, and they have a first ballot Hall of Famer in Albert Pujols batting right behind him. So it just, as the list goes on, it's a lot of really difficult hitters that he's going to have to get out.
I can see the case for Kershaw as number one. From just like a pure overall price insensitive standpoint, because he is better than Felix in general, and he is getting they're both getting the DH swing, but it's going in Kershaw's favor where it's going against Felix. So even though Kershaw is against the better offense, he is getting that. So I could see Kershaw. I don't think there's any need to spend more for him, but I could see if price isn't an issue, I can see the case for Kershaw being your guy.
Yeah, just because, he is so good. I've said this. He did go the 3 scoreless innings needed in his last start. So he now officially has the lowest ERA out of any starting pitcher in the live ball era over his first 1,000 innings pitched. So, that's the sort of historical dominance that we're seeing out of Kershaw. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so we already talked about Keuchel a little bit. So are there any other secondary starting pitching options that you like, Drew?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few, and it depends on the site that you're playing on with pricing and whatnot. But, we talked about Keuchel. I think Alex Wood opposing Felix is in a good spot just because the Mariners' offense is so left-handed. They did get some righties that they picked up at the trade deadline that helps improve them. But Alex Wood's going to a better park. Yes, it's a league switch that works against him and designated hitter that works against him. But he's just underpriced for his peripherals. It's tough to find a guy with a sub-330 XFIP that's priced at 7,000 on DraftKings. That's just very unusual. Charlie Morton is another guy against the
You
Marlins
love
offense.
Charlie Morton. You love Charlie
I
Morton.
love him against offenses that are really right-handed because he just dominates righties. He's got like that Justin Masterson thing going on with the arm slot and the ground balls. And the Marlins offense is pretty right-handed. They've gotten 4 left-handed bats in, which is the most they can really do, not counting the pitcher. And it's a great environment to pitch in at home in Pittsburgh, and he's just 6,400, I think, on DraftKings. So I think all 3 of those guys are in play as second starting pitcher options. And I think on other sites, if Phil Hughes is in that same range, I think he's in a good spot too against San Diego, who doesn't have a lot of power to really threaten Hughes, which is his biggest problem.
Yeah, this is the part where Derek talks about how Wade Miley is a pretty good pitcher, right?
No, I'm not really on Miley too much tonight. I mean, he's not a bad pitcher. But I'm not super on board with Miley tonight. Who was the first guy that Dink mentioned?
Alex Wood.
Alex Wood, okay. He's a little more expensive. He's probably not going to be an option, especially if you're going Kershaw. But I think Gio Gonzalez is probably your third pitcher overall tonight, and he's not that expensive. Like on DraftKings, he's 9,900. So, I mean, you'd have to make some sacrifices with hitting, but you'd have some really good pitching if you go like Felix Gio. I mentioned Keuchel earlier.
On Alex Wood, one of the things I've learned about real baseball this season is that a big part of pitching is repeating a delivery for all of your pitches and then having a similar release point on all of those pitches. And obviously, after Alex Wood got shelled by the Padres, I wanted to figure out why, because his peripherals were pretty good. And sort of what I figured out from reading about him was that the way in which he throws his fastball is his pitch mechanics are not easily repeatable, and that's a problem he's had all the way back to the minors, which was part of the reason why the Braves felt comfortable shifting him to the pen and bringing Gavin Floyd out as the 5th starter rather than Wood. So I'm a little bit hesitant to use him just because if he truly is one of those pitchers where I'm not feeling it today, I can't get a good grip on my fastball, like whatever, then he's kind of prone to getting shelled.
I don't think there's any real need to reach down further, especially if the weather is not an issue with Keuchel. Like, I think he's kind of the clear number 2 guy tonight, like number 2 starting pitcher after you take either Felix or Kershaw. But I think Josh Tomlin is in a pretty good spot. Cincinnati's offense is just...
No, Josh Tomlin is so bad, though.
He's not so bad. Josh Tomlin has like a 315 xFIP this year or something ridiculous like that. Like, he's not that good of a pitcher. His strikeout rate is too high, but he's got pinpoint control. His stuff isn't bad. He's at home. He's against a terrible lineup. Like, it's not like you're going to expect this guy to go out and dominate, but for 6,200 on DraftKings, like, that's not bad.
I'm gonna let Drew field this.
I don't mind Tomlin against the Reds.
Really?
I'm not a big fan of Tomlin. Like, overall, like his stuff is pretty middling, and his strikeout rate is way different than what he's been throughout his whole career. So that's a little bit unusual. But I mean, that Reds offense is just so bad right now, and their lineup that they put in there tonight is pretty right-handed too. Tomlin's big problems in the past were with lefties. He had pretty wide platoon splits, and you take out Joey Votto, Jay Bruce is the only guy. Billy Hamilton. Those are the only guys that really scare you. Outside of that, it's pretty weak. So I don't mind him as an option. I would rank Keuchel and Wood and Charlie Morton ahead of him, but I don't mind Tomlin in that group.
Yeah. I'd put Morton. I put the other guys ahead of him, but I think Morton is kind of like on par with Tomlin for me tonight. Like, not necessarily cash game picks unless you really want to save money, but like definitely GPP guys.
We should probably talk about David Price since he is pitching tonight. I know we spent most of the time talking about Kershaw and Felix because they are better pitchers, but Price now has a very good offense behind him, and he's going against an offense that is, at its best, like frustratingly mediocre. So do either one of you like Price maybe as like a GPP or like a guy to play in like a 30 or cash game lineups or something like that?
Not in any cash games. I don't think there's any reason to pay his price when Felix and Kershaw both profile significantly better. But as a GPP guy, if you want to fade Felix and Kershaw and you want to spend heavy on a pitcher, I mean, Price is still in a pretty good spot, just not as good.
Okay. Yeah, is that your thoughts on the matter, Drew?
I would agree with that. I wouldn't use him in cash games, and I'd use Gio ahead of him in cash games if you were going to go
too.
off the board. Even if they were priced somewhat similarly, I'd probably consider that. But they're priced so differently that it would be an easier decision. So I would agree with that. That I'd probably start cash games building on like a one starting pitcher site around Felix or Kershaw or Gio on two starting pitcher sites. If you're going really pitching heavy around those three, if you're going, if you're dipping way down, then I'd get into the Keuchel and the Morton, Tomlin, Wood area.
Okay. Do you want to give any talk about your boy Jesse Hahn, Derek?
I don't know. Not tonight, really. Not going into the AL. Outside of Petco, I mean, even though Target's like kind of a pretty good pitcher's park, it's not Petco. He's gonna have to face a DH. Hahn, and he's so expensive. Like his price has gone up. Like it was hard to play him last week when he was in like a really good matchup because he's almost 10K on DraftKings. So for his price and given his matchup tonight, he's not on my radar.
Okay. Are there any other pitchers that you want to talk about, Drew? Or are we good here?
No, I mentioned Phil Hughes. Just if he, I didn't see any price points that this happened, but if he's in that tier price wise with like Morton, Tomlin, Wood, Keuchel, I would consider him in that group. I found him to be more expensive than that group on the sites that I checked.
You really like Charlie Morton. Like, it's incredible to me that you would put him on the same level as Keuchel.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing here. Like I feel like Keuchel is well above that whole tier there.
Yeah, I would agree that his skill wise and probably the matchup, he's probably above that tier. I would agree with that. But I'm just saying pricing wise, they're all kind of grouped together. Those are all viable options to me. And if the weather continues to be a challenge for Keuchel, you're going to have to look at other options.
Okay, cool. I just looked at the Philadelphia forecast, and what it looks like right now is it's about 30% at first pitch, and then by 8:30 it's at 0% for the rest of the night. So for whatever that means, I think I'm still going to roll Keuchel and just kind of hope that works out, just because I don't want to be using Charlie Morton in my cash games, even though I will give this to you, Drew. Every time you've told me to use him as a second starting pitching option on DraftKings, he's done really, really well. So maybe he's just
he's a very predictable guy because he's like Masterson in that regard. Although Masterson this year is walking righties, which is when it gets a little bit shady for those extreme ground ball, extreme splits guys. Morton doesn't walk righties, so if you get a lineup that's full of righties, unless they infield single him to death or ground ball single him to death, he's probably going to pitch well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with that. We have a lot of hitters to talk about today, though. So let's just start doing it. Let's talk about stacks, and like this is where you guys can fight about how good of a pitcher Travis Wood is or not, because I think everyone is correctly looking at right-handed bats for Colorado as the number one option that you're trying to get in your cash game lineups today. So do you agree that that's the number one team to target, Drew?
Absolutely, yeah. And my argument on Travis Wood was relative to Paul Maholm, but we'll keep that for another time. Who almost made it out of the Dodgers bullpen for a start or two this year. But yeah, Wood's not. I mean, he's not the type of pitcher that's going to succeed in a small park or a park that inflates power, and he's not going to succeed against right-handed heavy lineups that have power because he's a fly ball specialist and he struggles with right-handed bats, specifically with power. So this is not a great matchup for him in general. Guys like Willen Rosario and Nolan Arenado are going to be really tough outs for him.
Yeah, this is an awful lineup for him. He's going to get shelled.
So would you suggest 4 Rockies in cash games on FanDuel draft day and the like, Derek?
I don't think you need to force it in. I think you might end up, finishing there. But it's not like you say, okay, I need to get my 4 Rockies. Let me pick who they are. I mean, you always approach it organically, and tonight it's probably going to wind up being a bunch of Rockies in there.
I mean, just from looking at salaries and building lineups on my own, I found like anytime Willen is against a left-handed pitcher at home, he's a lock. I honestly don't care if he's batting 8th. I know that Dan is shaking his head somewhere about that, but I like his weighted on base average versus left-handed pitching at home is like almost 480, I think.
You can't slice it up like that, but I mean, he is in a really good spot. Morneau batting 4th is frustrating because if he was batting like 6th instead of Rosario would be in a good batting position, but He's still in a good spot, even though he's only batting 6th tonight.
I'd still take Rosario ahead of every other catcher, even hitting 6th.
I also really like Derek Norris, but we'll talk about that in like 5 minutes. So outside of that game, I mean, are there Cubs that you're really liking? I know that Brett Anderson is kind of this weird case for the Rockies because he's their only pitcher who's actually like has good stats at any point in their career. Like Matzik, Friedrich, Jorge De La Rosa, Jair Jurgens, like all of these guys are just bad pitchers. But Anderson actually has been okay outside of Coors. So it makes targeting him in Coors a little tricky. But are you still looking at right-handed Cubs bats tonight, Drew?
Yeah, I think so. It's more about pricing, and we always talk about this, but the road team generally has softer pricing when they're going into Coors because they're priced on playing the majority of their games somewhere other than Coors. So you can get decent prices on guys like Arizmendi Alcantara, Starlin Castro, Justin Ruggiano. You can get decent prices on those guys. Wellington Castillo even is at a really low price. I wouldn't mess around with him over Rosario, and he's hitting 7, so it's not ideal, but they're fine. And then, any site that has Baez, if Baez is priced down...
He's almost minimum price on draft day, 5.2.
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer to me. The guy has as much pop as anybody in the minors, and pop plays in daily fantasy. Home runs win, extra base hits win, so hitting second in the lineup is a really good spot for him.
Everyone should know that Drew is absolutely 1,000,000% irrational about Alcantara, about Baez, about every single new Cubs player over the next 2 years. Take Drew's take about them with like an entire salt block.
Yeah, because that Kyle Hendricks guy I've been really wrong about so far. That he can be a Mike Leake. I've been really wrong on that so far.
Hey, you willfully confirm that bias all that you want, Drew Dinkmeyer. And I will say that Baez, like, obviously these takes are not just from Drew. He actually legitimately does have, like, I think at this point he has almost more career professional home runs than Eric Hosmer does. So that's pretty sad. Okay, well, real quick before we start, I'm going to make you answer this question because this is a battle I've been having with myself all day. Jordy Mercer for 4,000 batting second versus a lefty, or Javi Baez for 4,000 batting second versus a lefty?
Baez all day long.
Yeah, I assume that would be the answer. Luckily, Baez is not available on FanDuel, so I can just take Mercer there and not feel that bad about it. Okay, let's start talking about catchers. So we both, all three of us agree that Willen is the play. Like, let's just sort of plug him in and move on. Outside of that, though, someone I really like on FanDuel, maybe for a tournament, Derek Norris is 3.1 on FanDuel. That's a pretty reasonable price against him. Smiley's like a pretty decent young pitcher, but against lineups that can throw a ton of lefty bats at him, he really struggles. I know about a month ago he went up against the Astros, and I don't even think he made it through 5 innings just because they clubbed him so hard. And the Athletics are a much better version of the Astros, basically.
Yeah, I think Norris is a decent option tonight, but I think there's enough like bad pitchers going where you don't need to risk it against a pitcher who's legitimately pretty good, like Smiley is, even if they are going to throw a bunch of righties at him.
Yeah. Catcher is probably honestly one of the only positions where there isn't like a significant discussion to have, though, because the options there are kind of limited. Like the best option has the platoon and Coors and is at a more than affordable price on every single site. So we probably don't have to spend very much time talking there. Middle infield is a lot different, though, particularly second base, because neither the Cubs nor the Rockies have a second baseman. I think maybe Rutledge has second base eligibility on a couple sites. I'm not sure about that. But
Alcantara, he does.
Oh, yeah. I'm an idiot. Alcantara is pretty expensive on DraftKings, though. He's 4.1. So if you're going Clayton or Felix, and you're spending at some other spots, it's sort of hard to do him and Baez. So, maybe talk about Alcantara. I don't know how to say his name.
It's honestly. Alcantara. That's how I thought it was Alcantara, but the Len Casper has been pronouncing it Alcantara for the Cubs broadcast booth. So I'm going with Alcantara.
So I don't even really know what he profiles as, honestly, other than that he's been pretty nice so far as the majors, and that Zips projects him for about a 330 weighted on base average for the rest of the way.
Some of the comps that he's earned coming up through the system, and he's not in that tier with Bryant and Baez and even Soler or Russell, so he doesn't get as much attention. But some of the higher end comps he's received are guys like Jose Reyes. He doesn't have he's not quite as aggressive as Jose Reyes was in his younger years on the base paths, but he's kind of that guy. When Reyes first came up, he never walked, and he eventually became a better hitter in terms of walking and making contact. Alcantara is kind of that guy where he doesn't walk a lot, but he hits for surprising power for his size. He's always had good extra base hit rates, good ISOs through the minors, and that's what he's put together this year, both at AAA and at the major league level. So that's kind of like high end where people have comped him down the road. Now, he's got a higher floor than guys that have come up with big comps like a Brandon Wood or something like that, because he's a little bit more skilled with the bat in terms of contact rates. But that's kind of the high end of where I see him falling.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much the scouting report that I've heard on him, which is basically that he has a good hit tool. He doesn't have a whole lot of power, but for his size, he has a little bit. It's a little bit more gap-to-gap power with like extra base hits instead of like home runs. But he has good speed. So a guy who has good speed and who can hit the ball and who plays defense, pretty well, which is going to keep him in the lineup. He profiles as a pretty good player.
So that actually makes him sort of a better player in Coors, because what Coors profiles so well for is 4 extra base hits. It's actually, Derek, if I'm right, it's not actually like a top 5 home run park. Is that like by your stuff?
It depends kind of on the denominator you're using for your park factors. Like what Coors really does well is it depresses strikeouts a lot. So like there's fewer strikeouts, so there's more balls in play. So more of those balls in play are going to turn into home runs. But in terms of like contacted balls, like home runs per contacted balls, it's like a good park, not a great park. And then what it really does well is it improves batting average.
Yeah. So AA would be obviously a really good play because he does like with his legs and stuff. And I mean, we saw this on a very different level because D. Gordon is a different player. He doesn't have as much power. But D. Gordon, the first series the Dodgers had when they still had righties in the rotation, he scored like 15 FanDuel points a game while he was there just because he put the ball in play and like let his legs do the work. So, I mean, maybe you could justify him. Would you take, here, out of the middle infielders that the Cubs have, would you take Alcantara, Starlin Castro, or Baez for the $4,000 on DraftKings if you had to choose one of them, Drew?
The problem is Castro is a little bit higher. I think he's at 42, 45, something like that. He's a little bit higher than the other two. I think Starlin is the best hitter against left-handed pitching of the 3 right now. I don't think he profiles that long term. And he's hitting 4th, so he's got the best lineup spot of the 3 in terms of fantasy point scoring potential. But I think the price every dollar really matters today when you're paying up for pitching. So I think the price would lead me towards Alcantara first, and then the decision between Castro and Baez at shortstop would be made based on price for me.
The thing with Baez too is he profiles more for power than he does for like contact ability. So, I mean, he's going to be a little bit more, boom or bust, riskier, like as a cash game play. So definitely Alcantara, I think, profiles better in terms of that sort of thing. And I think probably overall as well.
The other thing about Baez is he's done this now for 3 straight levels. Every time he's gotten promoted, he's been like unbelievably bad for the first 20 or 30 games. Like strikeout rates in the mid 30%, no walk rates, like occasionally just hits the ball 600 feet, but doesn't make a lot of contact. And then he like adjusts and figures it out and just starts mashing. So promoting him in Coors, I think part of the reason the Cubs are promoting him this year, as opposed to holding him down for the whole year, is to try to get some of that adjustment period out of the way in a year that they have really no hope. So, in Coors, I'll take my chances, but just in general, I wouldn't be surprised to see if he struggles a lot early on.
I would like to add that in my personal model, there's a swag factor that is taken into account. And the fact that Javi Baez got the MLB tattoo on the back of his neck at a very young age gives him like a huge edge in that model. So for whatever that's worth.
And he tries to hit a home run every time he swings. There's no like 2-strike approach from Javi Baez.
I love it. Not a professional hitter. Okay, any other non-cores options at second base that we need to talk about? I don't know. Then Pedroia maybe versus Lance Lynn.
I think Aaron Hill against Danny Duffy at home and Chase.
Just because Ben is Drew, you're shaking your head at me. Ben mentioned that in our Skype chat last night because Pedroia is hot right now. Wait, no, he's locked in right now.
Lance Lynn's just so tough on righties. I would want no part of that. But yeah, I agree with Derek. Aaron Hill, and then the other side of that game, Omar Infante. Miley's good, but Infante's really, really cheap. Like, he's 2,500 on FanDuel. He's 3,500 on DraftKings. That can help tonight. And he usually bats second. So,
all right. Any other second baseman, Derek?
No, not really. I mean, I think you're better off just going with one of the cores guys, or in a GPP, someone like Hill.
Then at shortstop, let me pose you the Baez versus Mercer question.
It's actually probably closer than you would think it is.
Dude,
well,
Mercer's
not
so
that
good.
Davis would think it is, but that most rational people would think it is. I do think I prefer Baez, but I do think Mercer is a pretty solid option.
I would feel a lot better about Mercer if McCutchen was healthy, because that just it hurts the ability to score runs when you downgrade from having McCutchen behind you to now Josh Harrison behind you.
But Josh Harrison's locked in. And Drew, don't even shake your head like you think locked in isn't a thing, because it was like a week and a half ago that you told me I had to play Big Poppy because he was.
And what did he do? What did he do?
He might have hit a home run in the first pitch he saw. I don't remember.
Yeah, into the third deck against R.A. Dickey. It was awesome. I do think there's periods of times where guys feel more confident and are seeing the ball better. I don't think I can particularly judge it. When I hear a player, like Poppy said, I'm about to get as hot as Jamaica in the summer. I'm like, all right, well, let's see what happens. And then when he hits like 3 home runs in the next 2 games, I'm like, all right, he might be locked in.
Derek, give me your hot scouting Ben take on this.
I'm not getting into it.
Ben, Dan had a classic tweet today. He was like, if you missed Ben's fragmented sentences and scouting hot takes, be glad because he's back. And it's true. Ben is more full of hot takes than anyone I have ever met in my whole life. It's really great. But anyways, back to the point. Mercer, I think the right way to do it tonight is, because Baez is not an option on FanDuel, is to split up your exposure. Take Mercer in your FanDuel games, take Baez on draft day where he's almost the minimum, and maybe work Baez in at shortstop, or maybe get your Starlin Castro exposure on DraftKings. I know that, every $100 allotment means a lot tonight, but the difference between Castro, who does have a long major league track record of hitting left-handed pitching pretty well, is only about $400 or $500 more than Baez. So that might be the optimal way to allot shortstop exposure tonight.
Can you make that
especially...
same?
Go ahead, Drew.
Me? All right. Can you make that same argument for Castro on FanDuel over Mercer? He's only 3,200.
You could, but then you wouldn't have any Jordy Mercer.
Castro is a better play than Mercer tonight. And on FanDuel especially, I don't think Baez should be an option because he has a really good chance of just dropping like a -125 on you.
Well, he's not even in the player pool on FanDuel.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind.
Yeah. The other guy I'll throw in there, just because he's considerably cheaper than this group we're talking about on FanDuel, is Elvis Andrus, who's only like 2,600.
Yeah, he's still ridiculously cheap. I don't think he has as good a matchup as the rest of these guys, but it's still pretty good.
Well, he doesn't have the platoon advantage, so...
No, he does.
He does.
John Danks.
Against John Danks in the cell, so yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Danks being a lefty hurts him on the base pass, but I think the hitting matchup, is a really good one for Andrus. So for how cheap he is, I can definitely see him as an option.
Yeah, Dan actually talks about that a lot when the Rangers are playing, that Andrus, because he is sort of an even splits hitter, I don't know how your systems project him, but he's actually almost sort of better to take against right-handed pitchers because then he gets the steals that he wouldn't get otherwise. All right, let's do first base, because I actually don't have any idea what to do in this situation because neither Morneau or Rizzo have the platoon. And not that that's like obviously it's not the end-all be-all, but lefty on lefty is harder than righty on righty, just because right-handed batters need to be good at hitting right-handed pitching, or they wouldn't be in baseball lineups because they would be almost useless. I will say that I kind of like the idea of using Rizzo, especially in a tournament, and just hoping that they get to the pen, and then he just goes, like, he just sends an Adam Ottavino pitch, like, to Canada.
He's hit left-handed pitching really crazy well this year, like way better than right-handed pitching he's hit. Now, I know that's not predictive long-term, but I'm saying in a tournament play, it's not just hoping that the game gets into the bullpen. He's had some success against left-handed pitchers, and Brett Anderson is a big, curveball guy, which in Coors Field, if you don't throw the curveball perfectly, they hang.
Curve is a terrible pitch in Coors, yeah.
And so I think there's more upside to Rizzo than just hoping it gets into the bullpen. I wouldn't recommend him in cash games. He's still very expensive, but I think there's more upside than just the bullpen upside.
And I think if you're going as a contrarian guy like that, it's definitely Rizzo over Morneau.
Yep.
It's not even a
Dude,
question.
Rizzo's nearing Stanton levels of just raw power, which is pretty crazy. Because
Rizzo, he had the pedigree. I mean, and this year he's making adjustments. He's hitting both sides better. And
what happened to Mike?
Marjorie
really
Stoneman
good player.
Douglas represent. We went to the same high school.
Oh, what happened to Mike Olt, man? Because Olt had that crazy power tool as well.
We didn't go to the same high school.
That's the problem. In terms of cash games, though, I actually think that tonight is sort of like a Matt Adams, Mark Krause, Garrett Jones type. You don't think so? All right, Drew, tell me what I should be doing at first base.
Adam dun.
Yeah, he's a pretty good option.
He was a guy we were talking about last night, how even though he's so boom or bust, when the matchup is this good, it's really hard to ignore him even in the cash game. And he has basically the same matchup he has last night, where he profiles so well. I mean, he could go 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts.
Yeah.
But the upside on him is just so big, and the matchup is so good. It's going to be hard to turn him up in cash games for what he costs.
And if you're a zero condom roster constructor like myself, then you take those risks. But I think Adam Dunn is the guy
Drew,
that I'm most
do not pretend that you have a zero condom philosophy in DFS baseball. That is simply in yearly football, in which that is true.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But I do like Dunn more than the other guys. The other 2 guys that are around him in our model are Matt Adams and now Brandon Belt, that he's hitting third in the lineup. That's a nice shift for Belt against Jimmy Nelson with a big park shift.
A couple people in chat mentioned Brandon Belt. I mean, I would have to go to Ben for a scouting hot take on Jimmy Nelson. But
Nelson's a pretty decent pitcher.
He's been atrocious since getting called up, though. There's he's been getting shelled, got shelled several times. Yeah, Dave makes sense to me. He's given more than 5 earned runs up 2 times.
Yeah, so I can see Belt definitely as a play. First base, yeah, it's kind of ugly. I think if you're not going like spending up for a guy like Abreu, and you're too scared off of Dunn, then I think you are kind of going into that tier where it's Belt or I don't even know, Matt Adams or Jonathan Singleton.
Gabby Sanchez too. You can get your 2 or your 3.2 plate appearances from Gabby Sanchez before he gets pinch hit.
Even Rizzo, as a cash game guy, I don't hate him tonight. Especially if you're not paying up for Abreu and you're not going Dunn.
All right, everyone, I was wrong. He gave up 8 runs in one game, so that was what I was remembering. I mean, 8 runs is a lot to give up, though, and it's not like he's been shutting people out since then. He's given up 5 hits, 4 hits. He's walked guys in every single start, and he hasn't been K'ing that many guys either. So I stick by it. He's you don't need to be afraid of Jimmy Nelson.
The split expectation I have on him is pretty wide too, from right-handed batters and left-handed batters. So if you're talking, Brandon Belt, the left-handed side, I don't mind taking a shot at that.
Tuttle's just getting all defensive because it's a Brewer right now, so I'm going to stop paying him.
Tuttle usually just rails on the Brewers. He usually has all sorts of self-hatred issues.
Tuttle actually doesn't care about anything other than proving me wrong. That's really his main drive throughout the day, is just being that thing that you think is actually stupid. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever, dude. I'm gonna go. Because I didn't say 8 earned runs, Tuttle. Oh my God. He's just
You
I'm
said
so
that-
tilted.
I think the issue is that you said that he has gotten shelled like multiple times with multiple earned runs when that didn't happen. So
He has given up multiple earned runs in every start except one.
okay, but the point is that you kind of again pulled that out of thin air.
No, I didn't.
Well, you just admitted you were wrong. So which lie am I supposed to believe?
Thin air, he absolutely did get shelled. That happened.
Well, yeah, the first his like debut game, or whatever game that Ben recommended him, basically.
Yep. Because Ben's scouting hot take just dooms
Right,
play.
and Ben likes him again tonight for what it's worth. But I mean, we got scouting hot takes versus imaginary numbers, so I'm usually going to go with the scouting hot take.
Okay, I'm just gonna. This is my retirement. This is my last show ever.
This is like the 8th time that you've done that.
Yeah. All right. Let's do
Maybe
third base
9th.
real quick.
Oh, it's your 9th. It's definitely your 9th. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a fact.
Let's do third base real quick because there's literally only one guy. To me, it's Nolan Arenado.
Oh, interesting.
That's
okay.
not what I expected your one guy
Yeah,
to do.
I was expecting some
Makes this-
Donaldson action.
Oh, Donaldson. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, but Donaldson is more expensive and not in course. It's Nolan Arenado. I mean, You gotta save. You gotta save
I mean,
money. So.
Arenado
for the
versus
price,
Beltre
I
on DraftKings, 100 difference between Arenado and Beltre. You sticking by Arenado, no doubt? Because I think that's a tough decision.
Yeah, I'm sticking by Arenado because I'm wildly irrational and I fade Adrian Beltre all the time.
I think Beltre is in a better spot than Arenado tonight. I like Arenado, but on DraftKings where there's a $100 difference, Beltre is the better play.
Yeah. Derek, maybe later you can explain to Tuttle why there's like not really a difference between an earned run and a regular run, and like how pitchers like it's just stupid. So, oh my God, this is ruining my whole day.
Wait,
This
what do you mean
for
there's no
those of
difference?
you for those of you in chat who have
in
never
terms of like pitcher skill.
who don't understand the term tilt or have never experienced watching tilt, this is someone tilting. This is what the signs of someone tilting are. Eventually, there will be something thrown. If you're Tommy G, it's a remote control. If you're Davis, it's probably a crumpled up Red Bull can. But at some point, the final activity of tilt will be a thrown device.
No, it's gonna be me leaving our Skype chat for like the 5th time. And then waiting outside, like knocking on like my computer screen to get let back in for like the next 3 hours. All right, let's get back on track. So, Derek, who do you like at third base?
I like Beltre best, and where he's comparable to Arenado price-wise, I think Beltre's your guy. After that, I do think Donaldson is a good option, but you're not going to pay up for him, given Beltre and Arenado. I think Juan Francisco is a good, cheaper option, especially in GPPs where you can, afford if he goes, 0 for 4. But against Bud Norris at home in the Rogers Center with the platoon, Norris has got some home run issues. Francisco is a big power guy. I like him tonight. Yeah. As far as like cheap guys, I guess maybe like Connor Gillespie. He's only batting 6th tonight, which kind of sucks. Sometimes they'll bat him like 5th at least. But against Colby Lewis at home, I don't dislike him. Other than that, I mean, I think I don't think you're digging too deep at third base tonight.
Cool. All right. I'm still gonna take Arenado because swag. Is he batting 4th? Or 5th? I don't have a lineup in
He's
front of
batting
me.
3rd.
Bro,
Bro.
that whole conversation we just had about other third basemen was a big old knot wave because I'm just playing Arenado. Outfield actually is interesting though because there's like a million different directions you can go. Also, just looking at the Athletics lineup that just came out, Johnny Gomes batting 4th. I think he's 2.3 on FanDuel, and he's somewhere in the mid 3s on DraftKings. I think that. I mean, Gomes had a better weighted runs created plus versus left-handed pitching than Cespedes did, for whatever that's worth this
Why are
season.
you picking on Smiley tonight? I mean, I know you like the A's, but
I don't think he can get righties out that well, and it's going to be increased by the fact that the A's are going one, 6 righties against him, including switch hitters. Like that's going to make it worse, in my opinion.
Oh, your boy Nate Fryman's hitting 6th. He's
Dude.
2K on DraftKings.
It's already in my draft day lineup, so got that out of the way.
2K on DraftKings. That's some cheap.
Cheap
exposure.
Those 2 at bats are gonna be glorious before Brandon Moss gets off the bench. Okay, in terms of like if I told you could spend on one like sort of high priced outfielder in between like 4-5 and 3-5 on FanDuel, who would it be, Drew?
4-5 and 3-5. Probably Adam Eaton
over Drew Stubbs.
I mean, it's those 2 that I'd be looking at. I mean, the way that I'm constructing my lineups, I don't think I'm going to have that kind of room left over in the outfield. But those are the 2 that I would be looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
Eaton is locked in.
So Nelson Cruz has the cold flag on Derek's system right now, and I think he has like 4 hits, or he has 6 hits since the All-Star break. But he is stupid cheap on FanDuel. Is there any reason we should be fading or taking Nelson Cruz tonight, Derek?
Yeah, he's been really bad lately. I don't know what's wrong with him, but the matchup is really good, and for his price, he's going to be a tough guy to turn up. I mean, Burley's not a good pitcher. Even though he's not at home, he's in an even better park in the Rogers Center. He's got the platoon, so he's going to be a really tough guy to pass on.
I said this last night, but there's a 150% chance that Tuttle rosters Nelson Cruz because it's like a combination of all of his favorite things, like an underpriced stud and picking on Mark Burley, who is like that's his Eric Bedard. That's like the one pitcher that he just wants to see give up like 13 earned runs. Or just regular 13 of them. It doesn't really matter because he's still giving up the runs. Doesn't really matter. Because errors are... Really, they're subject to the human who's judging the ball. Like, D. Gordon gets on base all the time due to error, but he might just be getting on base because he's really fast. Yeah. I'm so tilted.
There's definitely a correlation between reach down errors and speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
D. Gordon had like 18 stolen bases last week. It's crazy.
Yeah. Do you know his name? His name is Deveris. Did you know that's his name?
Devaris Gordon.
Are we sure that it's his name?
Yes. That's what MLB has his name listed as. I'm pretty sure it's MLB. So that's what he's showing at.
What was this
as in my system right now? I will change
One
those
second.
names.
I need a Drew hot take on Justin Ruggiano right now.
1 second.
He's pretty cheap.
1 second before you get to that. What was it? Was it PTI that had the fact checker at the end that would tell them like
reality?
Reality.
That's what we need to have on this show for Davis.
Tuttle would love to do that. Like Tuttle would love that job.
That would become his sole purpose in life. Like Tuttle would be all over that.
That is a fantastic idea.
All right, there it goes. Fact checker. New segment added to.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I hate you guys so much. All right, Justin Ruggiano hot take. I need it. I need because I think you and Derek have a different opinion on him just as a player in general, or maybe not. We'll let Derek go second though.
He has big power and he smokes left-handed pitching. So like I like him a lot where his price is down. He's got like a 270 plus ISO against left-handed pitching since 2012, and he's done most of that work in non-great hitting environments. Like he was with the Marlins. So I mean, this is a huge park shift from where he's compiled most of those statistics. So I'm big on Ruggiano.
Completely agree. I like Ruggiano in large part because he was playing in what was baseball's worst park for hitters the past 2 years. He's been a little bit of a disappointment this year in a more of a hitter's park, so I don't like him as much as I did at the start of the year when we were just basing him based off what he did with the Marlins. But he's still a really good option tonight in Coors, and he's like cheaper than he was, even like a week ago. He looks like he's 2,900 on FanDuel. Like I think he was like 33 or something.
When he was against all of these same pitchers, but just at home.
So yeah, he's definitely got to be. He's almost a must play tonight.
Oh, don't say that. Then Dan will put a face palm in your article, and then he'll go off and have the best game of his career. But then everyone will make fun of you and say, "Oh, well, the game." Oh my God, David, you got to take the show over, man. I'm so tilted. Guarantee some dogs. Drew, you go first because I know that Cardi's looking his up right now and doesn't know.
My first guaranteed dong, and you can decide which group this falls into, under the radar or stud, is Adam Dong.
Well, I called him a guaranteed double dong last night, so.
Well, we'll make up for it tonight with Adam Dong.
Yeah. Derek.
I think he's a great pick tonight. I'll take Jose Abreu then as my obvious guy. And as my under the radar, I'll take... How about Jonathan Singleton?
It's a good one. I'm going to go Justin Ruggiano and Johnny Gomes. You guys can decide what order those are in. No, Nate Fryman instead of Johnny Gomes.
Willen Rosario will be my stud guaranteed dong, my obvious.
All right, what are you going to regret, Drew? What's your regret for your cash lineups?
I'm going to regret not having Kershaw in my cash lineups. Well, I don't know. That's just scary. It's just always scary. Last time I did this was at FSTA. It was at FSTA, and he threw a no-hitter. Was it a perfect game or a no-hitter? No-hitter with 15 strikeouts. And I took Felix. It went very bad for Felix Island. As soon as I opened the scoreboards, Felix was like 18% owned. Kershaw was 80% owned, and I lost lots of money.
Derek.
So I'm a little nervous.
What's up, Davis?
What's your regret?
My regret is probably going to be whichever I don't go with of Felix and Kershaw. I mean, yeah, that's going to be the regret.
My regret is responding to a Soccer Dave tweet about a year and 6 months ago when he said, "Hey, I'm starting a site and I'm looking for writers. Would you care to be interested?" Oh, yeah, that sounds great. I'll totally do that. That's my regret because that was one of the most tilting decisions I've ever made in my entire life because it's basically been him and Dan picking on me for the last year.
Yes, you poor soul. You are so tortured, Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you act like you don't bring this on yourself.
What? He just go. I can't do this.
I mean, you can. And we can help you through it if you can. Just, I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's like I always say, just tell the truth. All right, well, that will do it for today's show. Thanks to Davis Maddock, Derek Carty, and Drew Dinkmeyer for joining us. And again, thank you to Fantasy Elite for hosting the show. And Mike Leone is in the championship, so we will be following along closely.
Start Jimmy Nelson in all your cash games because he's never given up multiple runs in a game before.
Well, he did have a blister on his finger. And
that excuses the other starts where he wasn't that good.
Well, he did say that this blister is going to allow him to throw normal now. So,
where's the link, David? Just show me the link where he's.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put the actual link in chat if you want facts. I didn't know that was your thing, but I guess it is. So that will do it for today's show. Join us tomorrow when Davis will be back on here, and he'll either be rubbing it in how bad Jimmy Nelson did, or he will be basically apologizing.
No, I will never apologize.
But not because he's wrong.
I've never been wrong before.
Because of something else. Also, if you want facts, you can click in the chat box. But again,
this is worse than my skateboard losing a wheel.
I don't know. That was like pretty classic. That was a classic event. Big games tonight, so good luck to you if you are in any of the big games or big qualifiers. Drew, when do you leave for Africa?
Next week.
Have you started practicing your
Practicing my what?
Your dialect?
No.
Swahili?
No.
Not a thing?
No. Just gonna try to live. That's my only goal. Communication, not a goal. Live, goal.
I feel like communication should be a goal since
If
you're
you
going to be
need someone to
competing
communicate
for
with lions, I can come with you.
$1 million.
The Lion Whisperer.
Yeah.
We're kindred spirits.
Oh, you said lion. I thought you said lying. All right, well, that will do it for the show. We will see you tomorrow, 5 Eastern, 4 Central Time. Later.